The day I stopped paying for their lies. Was it wrong to stop paying my ex-mother-in-law the monthly support she'd come to treat like a birthright? Or was it wrong that she expected it in the first place? Was it cruel to cut her off the moment the divorce papers were signed, or was it finally sane? Did Ethan really believe he could abandon our marriage, parade a newborn with his mistress at some luxury postpartum suite, and still reach into my bank account like nothing had changed? Did Darlene truly think she could kneel outside my new apartment door, wail for an audience, and shame me back into obedience? And if I opened the door, if I stepped into that hallway, would I be the one who lost control, or would they? If Ethan swung at me, would he hit me? If he didn't, what would he hit instead? His pride, his lies, his carefully staged image of good son and successful husband. And if I told the truth out loud, right there where the neighbors could hear, would anyone believe me, or would they believe the louder voice, the older woman, the man with the desperate face? If I showed proof, would it end it, or would it ignite something worse? What did Ethan think he still had over me? Guilt, history, fear, my reputation, my body, my silence. And what did he not know I'd been collecting, screenshotting, copying, saving, for far longer than he deserved? What if the real shock wasn't the divorce at all, but how long I'd been gone before the paperwork made it official? What if the first betrayal wasn't the mistress, but the day he watched me bleed and didn't move? What if the most dangerous thing in that hallway wasn't his raised hand, but my calm? What if the last card I held wasn't a lawsuit, wasn't a deed, wasn't a bank statement, but something so old and so dark it could fold his entire life in half? And if that card existed, if it was real, why hadn't I played it earlier? Because I was afraid? Or because I was patient? Because I wanted mercy? Or because I wanted precision? And if you're wondering whether people like Ethan ever truly see you, whether they ever understand the moment you stop being a person and start being a resource, ask yourself this. When the money stops, do they ask how you are, or do they ask what you think you're doing? My name is Maya Hart. In the old version of my life, people called me Sweet Maya. Easygoing. The glue. The one who keeps things together. I used to think those were compliments. I used to think being agreeable was the same as being loved. I used to believe that if I stayed kind enough, quiet enough, useful enough, the people around me would eventually learn to treat me gently. Then I married Ethan Cole. And I learned there are families who don't see kindness as a virtue. They see it as a discount. The first thing I did after the divorce papers were signed was cut off the $2,000 I'd been transferring to Darlene Cole. Every month, like clockwork, like a heartbeat, like a tax. I did it without drama. No message. No warning. No explanation. Just a quiet click in my banking app and a new line item in my budget that said, in my head, you're done. Ethan didn't notice right away. Of course he didn't. He was busy at some boutique postpartum retreat on the north side, one of those places with eucalyptus towels and pastel nurseries and nurses on call, where women recover and men pretend they're heroes for showing up. He was busy playing Dad of the Year with Kelsey, his fresh start, his real happiness. The universe finally sees me, a fair partner, cradling their newborn like he'd personally invented fatherhood. He didn't miss my money until it stopped being convenient. 3 days after the scheduled transfer date, my phone lit up with Ethan's name like a warning flare. Call after call. Then a text, long enough to be an essay, angry enough to be a confession. How could you do this? That money is for my mom. She depends on it. You're seriously going to let her struggle? After everything she did for you? You have no heart. You have no decency. What kind of person cuts off an elderly woman like that? I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I put my phone face down and finished my coffee. By lunchtime, the real show arrived. Darlene Cole showed up at my new building in River North like she'd rehearsed the route. She found my floor. She found my door. She dropped to her knees in the hallway as if the tile was a stage, and she started yelling loud. Enough for every neighbor with a peephole and a slow afternoon to hear. "You ungrateful little witch," she shrieked, her voice bouncing off the walls, slamming into doors. "After everything we did for you, you think you can just throw us away? We're family. Family. You're evil, Maya. Evil. I didn't open the door. I didn't even stand right away. I sat at my kitchen island, my new, clean, quiet kitchen, and I sipped my coffee slowly, like the steam itself was a reward. I listened to her voice crack and climb and crack again. I listened to the thud of her palm against her thigh, the theatrical sobs that came in bursts, the way her tone shifted when she heard someone else's door unlock down the hall. Darlene wasn't crying for me. She was crying for witnesses. My phone vibrated again and again on the countertop. Ethan, relentless. The name flashing like he still owns space in my day. Men like him always think they retain value, even after you stop buying it. I watched through the peephole. Darlene's hair was a mess on purpose. Her mascara was smeared on purpose. Her knees were pressed into the tile at an angle that let her lean into it, without actually hurting herself too much. Her hands were theatrical, one clutching her chest, the other jabbing at my door like she could stab her way through it. Maya Hart, she screamed. Open this door. Face me. You don't get to hide behind that door after stealing from my family. Stealing. That word always made me laugh, even when it made my stomach twist. Because Ethan had lived in the condo my parents helped me buy for years, like a king in someone else's castle. He'd let people toast him at parties for being so established, so impressive, such a provider. While my name sat alone on the deed like a quiet truth no one wanted to ruin the vibe with. Stealing, she said. 10 minutes in, Darlene's voice started to rasp. Her breath came harder. She was reaching the point where the performance becomes effort. That was when I set my coffee down. I picked up my car keys from the hook by the door and wrapped my fingers around the metal. The cold grounded me. The weight reminded me this was real. Then I opened the door. Sunlight from the stairwell windows spilled into the hallway. Every set of eyes that had been hiding behind doors suddenly felt bold enough to be seen. Darlene looked up like I'd appeared on cue. Her face changed instantly, sobs drying midstream, expression shifting into something sweeter, something pleading. Something designed to be forgiven by strangers. Oh, Maya, she whimpered, reaching for me with both hands. Honey, please. Please don't do this. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I know I said things. I didn't mean them. I'm old. I'm stressed. I'm scared. You don't understand what it's like. She crawled toward my feet like she was in a daytime drama, aiming to grab my ankle. I stepped sideways. Not dramatically. Not cruelly. Just calmly. Like avoiding a puddle. Her hands grabbed air. Her momentum carried her forward. She slammed chest first into the tile with a dull, ugly sound. A couple neighbors gasped. Darlene took that gasp and turned it into fuel. She rolled slightly, face tilted up, mouth trembling, voice suddenly louder. He's going to kill me, she cried. Ethan's going to kill me. He's going to hit me. He's going to beat me because you stopped sending the money. Please, Maya, please don't do this. I looked down at her. Up close. She looked like someone pretending to be helpless rather than someone who actually was. The difference is in the eyes. Real fear is messy. Performance fear is strategic. I kept my voice light, almost conversational, but I made sure it carried. Is Ethan going to hit his own mother because I stopped paying her, I asked, or because I sold the condo you two were already calling yours? The hallway got very quiet. You could feel the neighbors lean in. Darlene froze. Her expression flickered confusion, then panic, then that sudden hard flash of anger people get when you expose them mid-act. I watched her realize she was no longer directing the scene. My phone buzzed again inside the apartment. Ethan, still calling. I turned back inside, picked it up and held it where Darlene could see the screen. Then I opened my contacts, found Ethan's name, and pressed block. No hesitation. No shaking hands. Just a clean, decisive tap. That silence that followed wasn't remorse. It was power loss. Darlene pushed herself up like a spring snapping. The sweetness vanished. She jabbed a finger at my face and screamed in the voice she saved for private cruelty. You barren little, she spat, and then she found the words she knew could still cut. You couldn't even give him a child. You were useless. Useless. My son wasted years on you, years. You're a parasite, Maya. You ate our food, slept under our roof, and now you want to leave us in the street. The hallway air changed. Neighbors who'd been entertained a second ago suddenly looked uncomfortable, like the show got too real. 6 words. The same 6 words she'd used before, the ones she kept in her pocket like a weapon. And those 6 words hit a place in me I'd sealed shut for. Survival. Barren. Useless. Couldn't give him a child. For a fraction of a second, my body remembered. A sticky summer afternoon. The living room in the condo I'd once called home. The edge of the coffee table. A sharp impact. Heat between my legs. A sound I'd never made before, something animal. And Ethan's face, not moving. Not running to me. Not calling 911. Not grabbing my hand. Just watching. And then turning. Turning to steady his mother like she was the fragile one. Back then, I was 8 weeks pregnant. I'd been terrified and excited and careful. I'd been taking prenatal vitamins, reading books, daydreaming about names. I'd been touching my stomach in the shower like I could protect something with my palm. Darlene had been furious that day because I refused to give her brother money, her gambling-addicted brother, who always had one last problem that needed one last favor. I'd said no. Just once. And Darlene had treated that no like violence. She'd shoved me hard enough that my hip slammed into the coffee table corner. The pain was instant and bright. I crumpled. Then came the warmth, spreading fast, and the way my brain refused to understand what my body already knew. I'd looked at Ethan and begged. Ethan, please, the baby. He'd stared at me like I was inconvenient. Then he'd helped his mother sit down. Mom, are you okay? He'd asked. And Darlene, breathing hard, eyes bright with rage, had looked down at me bleeding and said, "Stop being dramatic." I worked through my pregnancy. I didn't have time to lie around and whine. The ambulance came late because Ethan hesitated. Because he wanted to handle it privately. Because he didn't want neighbors gossiping. Because the real emergency to him was embarrassment. I lost the baby. And the thing I lost with it wasn't just a heartbeat. It was whatever softness I still had left. In the hallway now. Darlene's insult tried to drag me back into that helplessness. But I didn't go. I let the memory settle behind my ribs like ice. Then I spoke. Quietly. Clearly. You're right about one thing. I said. Your family is cursed. Darlene's mouth opened, ready to celebrate the insult like she'd won. I didn't let her. But not because of me, I continued. Because you raised a man who watched his pregnant wife bleed on the floor and chose to hold his mother instead. Darlene's face went gray. I could feel the hallway listening like it was holding its breath. I kept going. Because I'd learned something about truth. It doesn't need to shout if it's sharp enough. And then he spent years living off my family's money, I said, while pretending he was the provider. Darlene shook like she wanted to lunge, but the audience had shifted. Even if they didn't like me, they now had a story. And people love a story. I took a slow breath and pointed not at her, but down the hall. If you want to keep performing, I said, there's a police precinct 2 blocks away. They'll give you a real stage. Then I turned to the neighbors, offered a polite smile, and nodded. Sorry for the noise, I said. It won't happen again. I stepped back toward my door. That was when the sound came from below. A shriek of brakes. A heavy door slam. Then footsteps, fast, angry, climbing. The kind of footsteps you hear in nightmares. Ethan arrived like he always did, late, loud, and convinced he was the victim. He burst onto my floor. Eyes wild, chest heaving, and saw Darlene on her knees, face twisted with fury. Then he saw me, his ex-wife, standing straight, not crying, not begging, and something in him snapped. You psycho, he shouted. You heartless. He raised his hand. A slap, big and dramatic, like he'd seen in movies. Like he was trying to reclaim dominance with a gesture. The air moved. Neighbors gasped. I didn't flinch. I stepped back exactly 1 pace, at exactly the right moment. His palm cut through empty space. He overextended. His shoulder twisted. His feet slipped. little on the tile. He caught himself before falling, but the humiliation landed hard. For a second, his face looked genuinely confused, as if he couldn't understand how the world had stopped. Obeying him. I took my divorce decree from my bag and held it up, open, where he could see the stamped seal. "We're divorced," I said. "So if you touch me, Ethan, it's not a marital argument. It's assault." His eyes started over the document like it was written in a language he'd never learned. "You did that without telling me?" he rasped. "I did it while you were busy filming your new life," I said. Darlene lunged up, screeching. "Hit her. Ethan, hit her. She stole our home." Ethan's attention snapped to my folder, my neat little folder of papers. He lunged for it. I moved faster. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, hit record. Then I dialed 911 on speaker. "911, what's your emergency?" "My ex-husband is attempting to break into my residence and assault me," I said, voice steady. "His mother is encouraging him. I'm being threatened and he's trying to take my property documents." Ethan froze like he'd been splashed with cold water. "Maya, what the hell?" he hissed, suddenly lowering his voice. "It's family stuff. Don't call the cops. Are you insane?" "Family stuff," I repeated, letting the camera capture his face. "We're not family." Police arrived fast, 2 officers, professional alert. They took in the scene, Darlene's crocodile tears, Ethan's frantic posture, neighbors watching like a live broadcast. "What's going on?" one officer asked. Darlene dropped right back into her role, sobbing dramatically. "Officer, please," she cried. "She tricked my son into divorcing her, sold our condo behind our backs. And now she wants to throw us out with nothing." Ethan nodded along, trying to look wounded. "That condo is marital property," he said. "She can't just sell it." I waited until the performance ran out of steam. Then I opened my folder and laid the documents on the hall railing like I was setting up an exhibit. "This is the deed," I said. "My name only. Maya Hart." Ethan's face tightened. "This is the purchase agreement," I continued. "Signed by me." Darlene's breathing changed. "And these are the bank statements," I said, sliding them forward, showing the funds transferred by my parents before the marriage. The officers read. Their expressions didn't change much, but I could see the clarity settle in. I pulled out a highlighted printout. "In Illinois," I said, "property acquired before marriage or gifted specifically to one spouse remains separate property." Ethan's lips parted. He looked like someone watching the floor open beneath him. He'd built his identity on that condo. He'd bragged about it. He'd hosted friends in it. He'd let people admire it as proof he mattered. And now, under fluorescent hallway lights, with neighbors watching, he was being reminded it was never his. One officer handed the papers back to me. "Ma'am," he said, "this appears to be your separate property." "Sir," he added, turning to Ethan, "you need to leave. If you continue, you'll be cited for trespassing and harassment." Darlene immediately threw herself into louder sobs, like volume could change the law. "I'm an old woman," she screamed. "How can she do this?" Ethan stood rigid, eyes glassy, jaw clenched. I gathered my documents back into my folder neatly. I thanked the officers. Then I looked at Ethan, really looked. And I said softly, with a calm I knew would haunt him more than shouting ever could, "Don't fall apart yet, Ethan." His eyes flickered, confused. "This," I said, "is just the beginning." And then, because I wanted him to understand what kind of game he'd been playing, I added one more thing, just loud enough for him to hear. "You should probably figure out where the money for Kelsey's push present came from," I said. "Before someone else does." I shut my door. The hallway noise vanished like a TV muted. Inside, my apartment felt like oxygen. On my couch, already waiting, was my best friend Sophia Grant, lawyer, litigator, the kind of woman who wears calm like armor. She had a glass of red wine in her hand and an expression that said she'd heard everything. "I could hear that woman from the lobby," Sophia said. "She should consider a career in theater." I poured myself a glass and clinked hers. "She's already in theater," I said. "She just never bought a ticket." Sophia's smile faded into focus. "You're sure you're ready to press the next button?" she asked. I nodded. "I've been ready," I said. "For 2 years." I didn't say the rest out loud, that I'd started collecting evidence the day I realized Ethan wasn't going to save me from his mother. That I'd learned to move quietly. That I'd learned to record, copy, screenshot, file, and store things in places he'd never look, because men like Ethan never look where they don't believe you're smart enough to hide. Just then, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Sophia lifted her chin. "Speaker." I answered. A soft voice, trembling on purpose. "Is this Maya Hart?" the woman asked. "Hi. My name is Brooke." Brooke. Kelsey's real name in this version of their story, the name Ethan used when he wanted to sound serious, respectable. Kelsey was her brand. She inhaled shakily, like she was about to confess something holy. "I know you hate me," she said. "And I deserve it. I do. But Ethan is under so much pressure. He loves me. He loves our baby. We can build a life, we can buy a new place. We can make money, we can." She paused for a sob. "Can you please stop hurting him?" she whispered. "Please. He's not sleeping. I'm scared something will happen." I listened silent, letting her perform. Then I laughed. Not loudly. Just enough to slice through her script. On the other end, she froze. "Why are you laughing?" she asked, offended and confused. I sipped my wine like I had all the time in the world. "I'm laughing," I said, "because you really think you get to call me and negotiate." "I'm not," she started. "What are you to him?" I cut in. "His girlfriend? His wife? His soulmate?" Her breath hitched. "Oh," I said sweetly. "Right. The wife spot is currently vacant." "Maya, here's a sincere question, Brooke," I said, my voice turning sharper. "Do you actually believe a man who lies that easily is going to stay loyal to you when things get hard?" She tried to summon tears again. "You used to be nice," she whispered. "You used to be kind. What happened to you?" I set my glass down with a soft click. "Kind didn't keep me safe," I said. "And it won't keep you safe either." Then I ended the call. Sophia shook her head. The confidence of people who've never paid for what they took. While we sat there, two women in a clean apartment, wine on our tongues, strategy in our eyes, Ethan was across the city in a cramped rental, watching his life collapse like a cheap tent. Because at that exact moment, Ethan got a text from Northbridge Solutions, his employer, a mid-sized tech services company, with a serious finance department and very little patience. The message was short. "Ethan, the client deposit you approved last month is under audit. The client denies the deposit. Be in conference room A at 9 a.m. tomorrow. CFO and legal will be present." Ethan read it once, twice. Then his hands went cold, because he remembered exactly where that money went. Not to a client. Not to an account. To Brooke's designer bag, one of those ridiculous bags people treat like investments. To the postpartum suite. To the champagne toast he posted online. The one where he wrote "blessed." He'd forged paperwork to cover it. He'd faked a deposit agreement. He'd told himself it was temporary. He'd told himself no one checks. Men like Ethan always think rules exist for other people. The next morning, he walked into that conference room like a man walking into a verdict. 3 people sat at the table: the CEO, the CFO, and the company's general counsel. No coffee, no donuts, just a thick file. "Sit down, Ethan," the CEO said. The CFO slid the file toward him. "This is the deposit agreement you submitted," she said. "The client says it's fake." Ethan's throat tightened. "We contacted them directly," the CFO continued. "They confirmed no deposit was made. The funds $250,000 were split and transferred to a personal account belonging to Brooke Lawson." Ethan's face strained. The general counsel spoke next, calm as a blade. "You want to explain?" Ethan's mind scrambled. He opened his mouth and found nothing. The CEO leaned back. "We received an anonymous email," he said. "It included these documents, bank transfer confirmations, and internal approvals. The evidence is extensive." Anonymous. Ethan's brain screamed my name. Of course it was me. Who else could it be? He looked up, eyes wet with panic, and tried to bargain with the air. The CEO held up 2 fingers. 2 options, he said. Return the full amount today, resign, and we won't press charges. Ethan swallowed, choking. Or, the CEO continued, we file a police report for embezzlement and fraud. Ethan's phone shook in his hand as he dialed Brooke. When she answered, her voice was sharp, already suspicious. What? She snapped. Sell the bag, Ethan hissed. Sell it now. Give me the money. What are you talking about? She barked. That bag, he said, louder. Sell it. I'm in trouble. That bag is mine, she said. You gave it to me. It's not yours. He snapped. It's stolen money. Brooke laughed, cold, ugly. You're not putting this on me, she said. You did what you did. Don't drag me. I'm going to prison, he said, voice cracking. Do you understand? Prison. Brooke went quiet for a beat. Then she said, not my problem. And she hung up. The call ended like a guillotine. Ethan ran. Out of the conference room. Out of the building. Out into the city like he could outrun consequences if he drove fast enough. And where did he drive? He drove to the only place left that still represented safety in his mind. Me. He drove to Grant and Pierce Legal, Sophia's firm, my new workplace, my new life, because desperate men always sprint back toward the woman they assumed would save them. He found me in the lobby. I was stepping out of the elevator with Sophia's younger brother, Caleb, who'd dropped off files. We were talking, smiling, normal, something Ethan hadn't seen me be in years. Ethan's eyes latched onto it like a wound. He rushed forward. Then he dropped to his knees. Hard. Right there on polished lobby tile, in front of reception, in front of interns, in front of clients. He grabbed my leg and sobbed like a child. Maya, please, he cried. Please. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Help me. I looked down at him like I was looking at someone else's mess. Caleb stood. Frozen, alarmed. I gave him a small, apologetic smile. I'm so sorry, I said. Go ahead. I've got this. Caleb handed me the folder and left like he was escaping a burning building. Ethan clung tighter. You can't do this to me, he sobbed. We were married. We had a life. I tried to pull my leg back. He tightened his grip. Maya, he whispered, frantic, I'll leave. Brooke. I swear. I'll fix it. I'll do anything. Just ask your parents. Please. They have money. They can loan it. I'll pay it back. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was grotesque. A life. I said. You mean the life where your mother shoved me into a table and you watched? Ethan flinched. You mean the life where you spent my parents' money and told people it was yours? His face crumpled. You mean the life where you stole from your company to buy your mistress gifts and put her in a luxury suite while I reused the same winter coat for 4 years? Ethan's sobs turned into gasps. He lifted his face, eyes suddenly flashing with anger as shame curdled into rage. Fine, he hissed. Fine. If you won't help me, I'll ruin you. I'll tell everyone here, what kind of woman you are. I'll make sure you have no reputation left. I looked at him. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a plain, worn manila envelope. Ethan went still. His eyes locked onto it like he recognized danger without knowing why. He swallowed. What is that? I tapped the envelope gently against my palm. You think your threats are my weak spot, I said. They're not. Ethan's face twitched. I lowered my voice, not to hide it, but to make him lean in and hear every syllable. You remember 3 years ago, I said. The night you came home shaking? Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. You hit an old man on Milwaukee Avenue, I continued. You were drunk. You panicked. You drove away. Ethan's whole body trembled. You paid your buddy Jason Reed to take the fall, I said. You made him sign papers. You gave him cash. You told him it was just a ticket and no one would know. Ethan's eyes widened. In pure terror. I smiled, small and cold. Last week, I said, I found Jason. Ethan's face went paper white. He recorded everything, I said. A full statement. Signed. Witnessed. Ethan's jaw worked like he was trying to chew through panic. I have the original, I said, lifting the envelope slightly. Right here. He made a sound like he was going to vomit. Then his anger collapsed into emptiness. He let go of my leg. He sagged onto the tile like his skeleton had turned to water. I looked down at him, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing but clarity. Ethan, I said, when I lost the baby, I thought I was going to die from the grief. He blinked slowly, tears spilling. But I didn't, I said. I lived. I stepped back. You're not getting rescued by me, I said. You're getting handled by the consequences. Behind me, the receptionist was calling security. Sophia was already walking toward us, expression ice-sharp, phone in hand, ready to make sure the scene ended legally and cleanly. Ethan stared up at me, lips trembling. Maya, he whispered, please. I leaned closer. Just enough for him to hear the last thing I wanted him to carry. I was in pain, I said. And you watched. Then I turned and walked away. Ethan's life unraveled exactly as you'd expect when a man builds everything on lies and assumes the women around him will cushion the fall. Northbridge Solutions filed a police report. Fraud and embezzlement aren't workplace drama when you hand auditors a trail of transfers. The hit-and-run case reopened when Jason's statement surfaced in the right hands. Brooke tried to disappear. She packed what she could, took the baby, moved out of her apartment like smoke. But money leaves footprints. Luxury receipts leave paper. Transfers leave timestamps. And I didn't know doesn't erase the fact that the account was hers. Weeks later, Brooke showed up at our firm, thinner, paler, eyes hollow, baby crying against her shoulder. She tried a new performance, one she'd never had to master before. The performance of consequence. Maya, she said, voice cracking, please. I'm begging you. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Ethan lied to me. I looked at her. The baby cried, and for a moment, my chest tightened, not with pity for her, but with an old grief that still lived somewhere deep, the grief of what I never got to hold. I didn't let it steer me. I'm not your loophole, I said. Brooke's face twisted. Then you're a monster, she snapped, the mask sliding off. You're doing this because you're jealous. Because you couldn't give him a child. I didn't flinch. I pressed the intercom. Security, I said. Please escort her out. Brooke screamed as guards approached. You'll get yours, she yelled. You'll regret this. But her voice sounded small in our lobby. Not powerful. Not in control. Just loud. That same week, Brooke and Darlene got into a physical fight in a cramped rental hallway, each trying to grab what little remained before courts. And Banks took the rest. The police were called. Neighbors filmed. The internet laughed. The perfect family Ethan had posted online became the kind of spectacle people consume for entertainment. I didn't watch the videos. I didn't need to. Because the real end of the story wasn't Ethan's punishment. It was my quiet beginning. Months after sentencing, Ethan requested a final meeting. Through his attorney. I agreed once because there's a kind of closure you can't buy. You have to take it with your own hands. In the visitation room, he looked older than his age, hair buzzed. Eyes dull, skin gray. He picked up the phone behind the glass and said, Maya. I picked up mine. He swallowed. You came. I said I would, I replied. His eyes filled. I'm sorry. I waited. He rushed, desperate to pour out regret like it could erase time. I ruined everything, he said. I was stupid. I was selfish. I thought I was. I thought I deserved more. I thought. He choked. If I could go back. I cut him off with one sentence, the only one I needed. When I was on the floor bleeding, I said, I was in pain. Ethan froze. His eyes widened like he'd been punched. He stared at me like the memory had finally arrived, late, heavy, unavoidable. I set the phone down. Then I stood. And I left. Outside, sunlight hit my face like a clean slate. I inhaled. The air smelled like pavement warming and spring trying to push through. That weight I'd carried, the constant pressure to be kind, to be small, to be forgiving, finally lifted. Not because Ethan suffered, but because I stopped living as someone else's resource. Sophia and I used part of my settlement and my savings to expand our pro bono domestic advocacy unit. We built a program for women who needed restraining orders, asset protection, emergency filings, safe exits, women who'd been told they were dramatic, crazy, too sensitive, hard to love. The first client I worked with was 26, shaking so hard she could barely hold a pen. Her husband had bruised her arms and hid money in a cousin's account so she'd leave with nothing. She sat in my office like a trapped animal. I slid her a tissue and said, "You're not crazy." Her eyes snapped up. "You're not difficult," I said. "You're not unworthy." She started crying. I spoke slowly, the way Sophia taught me to. Speak when someone's world is breaking. "We're going to document everything," I said. "We're going to file strategically. We're going to protect you legally and physically." She whispered. "He said no one would believe me." I leaned forward. "I believe you," I said. "And the law is going to believe you, too, because we're going to make it impossible not to." When we won her case, when the judge signed the order, when she walked out of that courthouse with her shoulders a fraction higher, she hugged me and sobbed like she'd been holding her breath for years. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for helping me live." Later that night, my parents texted me a photo from their trip up the California coast. They looked happy, truly happy, like the kind of happy I'd forgotten adults could be. I stared at that photo for a long time, and I realized my life wasn't after Ethan. My life was simply mine again. So if you ask me what the most American part of this story is, what makes it feel like the kind of drama you'd hear on a true crime-adjacent podcast or a legal thriller audiobook, it isn't the courtroom threats or the corporate audit or the public meltdown in a fancy lobby. It's this. In the end, nobody rescued me. I rescued myself. And the moment I stopped paying for their comfort, they finally revealed what they always were: people who didn't love me, only what I provided. And once you see that clearly, you stop negotiating. You start closing doors.